Good morning again.
Good morning.
Glad you're at Turning Point. I'm glad to hear that. I hope you say the same thing after it's all over. God is calling to us this morning in a very unique way, maybe different than before. Still calling out our name, still calling to us to put away and put down a worldly way of living. Think about that for just a moment. What are some of the worldly ways that impact who we are and how we live? I'm going to be very pointed and direct this morning because in our faith community, in our community at large, there are events that are going on. Our world is full of events that are going on that try to drag us from a sacred way of life to a secular way of life. We're going to hear a message from the Apostle Paul, who's going to talk to us about things that were pertinent in their day in a way that makes it pertinent to our day. And the only way to get this out into the open is to be direct and honest and open, because those kind of truths draw us closer to Christ, and working through those things help us to live closer to the way Christ lived. So I'm going to ask you, just off the top of your heart, what are some of the issues that are going on in our faith community? Some issues that are going on in our community? Some issues that are going on in our world that trouble you?
You want us to yell out? You want us to yell out?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Why don't you shout, don't yell.
Drugs.
Drugs.
Guns.
Guns.
Godless and lawless leaders.
Godless and lawless people.
Leaders.
Leaders. Oh, leaders. People too, but some of them are leading us. Fear. Gossip.
Yeah.
Greed.
Greed. I've entitled my message this morning, Friends Helping Friends. Heard that before?
Yes.
Friends helping friends follow Jesus is our mission statement. It is a way that we reach out to each other, to kind of pull each other up by the bootstraps, that we can focus in a dark world with the light of Jesus Christ. That's our job. That's our duty. That's what God calls us to be, and the way that God calls us to live. It's coming from a foundation in 1 Thessalonians. Thessalonians is a letter that Paul wrote to the new Christians in Thessalonica. See, there's probably a map in your Bible. You can look it up and see where we're talking about. Paul started a small home church there. And as always, or almost always, when the local people caught up with Paul, they got upset with him, chased him out of town. So it really wasn't safe for Paul to go back to Thessalonica. I'm wondering if it makes sense to put Chiefland instead of Thessalonica. If Paul were then chased out of Chiefland and couldn't come back, he'd send a letter to us at Turning Point to make a difference in who we are, to remind us that we are children of light in a world of darkness. They were worried, not because they were living in a world of darkness. They were worried about the end times, the coming of Jesus Christ, the second coming, all of those things. Here's the skinny on that. Only God knows when. But here's what I would tell you as your pastor and your friend. You have to be ready. There are stories throughout the entire New Testament that talk about opportunities lost, opportunities gained, because some were ready and some were not ready. So my advice, my suggestion, my prayer is that you live a life of readiness. Live lives of faith and love and hope. Because here's the deal. The entire world is looking from the dark to the light, watching the way that you live your life. Because you say to the world, I am a child of light. I am a child of God. I am a follower and a believer in Jesus Christ. But what the world is looking for is the merits of your kind of life before they make this leap of faith out of the dark into the light. I'm thinking by this time in our service, you have either totally forgotten or you're wondering what in the world came upon Pastor Kent to play a song like Bonnie Raitt. What was the name of that song?
Give them something to talk about.
Give them something to talk about. We come out of a Wesleyan tradition. And John and Charles Wesley would go into the local establishment. Let's just say it that way. The local establishments. And they'd hear a tune, hear a song, and then they'd go back and change just a word or two to make it transform itself from secular to sacred through their sculpting. I have this scenario, I've shared it with you before. They come into the local establishment. John and Charles put a quarter in the jukebox. They push their song, and the people around there entertaining themselves, and others go, hey, I know that song. I just didn't know the words. What if Bonnie Raitt's song, Let's Give Them Something to Talk About, were sculpted by us to hear a message from God, a love song from God, that says to us, let's give them something to talk about. They already think we're nuts. Let's share about our love affair with God. Let's turn that secular world into a sacred world where we take our light and shine it into the darkness and get their attention so that they feel more comfortable taking that leap of faith, and they're not concerned and worried and fearing death and gossip and guns and, oh, the world's full of opportunities to be worried. Christ calls us to be different. And the world is calling out to you, to me, to all of us, in a very loud voice. Am I speaking loud? In a very loud voice. Be like me. The world's saying, be like me. And yet, we are the light that shines into the darkness because Jesus Christ calls us to be different than the world. And yet in every generation, even some of God's children falter. It's because there's this draw that comes from the darkness that leads us away. In our own faith community, there is evidence that calls us personally to examine God's direction. And I call to your lives, to your hearts, to your minds, that you focus on faith and love and hope. There's a concern based on what's happening in the world of congregational safety. There have been stories fabricated without researching the truth. There will always be a chance to be lured back into the worldly life that is sometimes seeming so appealing to us, but it is full of uncertainty. It is full of fear. If God were singing, let's give them something to talk about, the words would be similar but not the same. It would be about light shining in the darkness. It would be about love and hope and grace. Paul tells us, rumors, gossip, fear of violence, addictions, attacks upon the innocent are the world's way for you to abandon your faith for fear, your love for hatred, your hope for despair. But Paul is point blank. Encourage one another. Build each other up. Become friends helping friends. Now, let's see if the foundation gives us encouragement and helps us to understand. It is the first letter to the Thessalonians, the 5th chapter, the first 11 verses. Now, brothers and sisters, about times and dates, we do not need to write to you, for you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come upon them suddenly as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you, brothers and sisters, are not in the darkness, so that this day should surprise you like a thief. You are all sons and daughters of light, sons of and daughters of the day. We do not belong to the night or to the darkness. So then, let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be alert and self-controlled. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be self-controlled, putting faith and love as a breastplate, and the hope of salvation as a helmet. For God did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. He died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we may live together with Him. Therefore, encourage one another, build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. Did you get that last line? Just as in fact you are doing. That's kind of like keep up what you're doing. I want to encourage you for the good job you're doing. Turning Point, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. And that's what Paul was saying to the children of light in Thessalonica. Remember a guy named Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King? Here's what he said: darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hatred. Only love can do that. When we live by Christian values, we shine light into dark places, and we put love in place of hatred. In perilous times such as these, and there have been perilous times in every generation, we are not able to hide ourselves in a bunker. There's a house in town, can you imagine where this came from? I can't. There's a house in town right across from the Baptist church. It has a bomb shelter in it. You know that people are spending millions of dollars building bomb shelters with TVs and movie theaters and shopping malls all underground just in case. That's not being prepared in my thought. That's fear that drives that. You just need faith. Faith to care for your loved ones. Because we need to practice. We need to be ready to help each other to live out that slogan that we just call a mission statement, but it's true. Friends helping friends. Follow Jesus. And it's not a mission statement, it's a way of life. It's a way that we have chosen to live. Children of light shining into the darkness. Even though we are friends helping friends, we are responsible for how we live, the things we do. We'll be held accountable, for we're responsible for the choices that we make, good and bad. We live in a generation that has become a generation of excuse makers. And they make excuses instead of doing the right thing. Paul was explaining that we must live in peace with one another. That sounds so beautiful, living in peace with one another. We must encourage one another. Be kind to one another. That's what children of the light do. That's what friends help friends do. You see, sisters and brothers, the world's circumstances rarely determine your destiny. It is our character that determines our ability to contribute to the world around us. It's our character that does that. Examples reach around the world to substantiate that God does not use extraordinary people to do ordinary things. God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And when we understand that, we understand why God calls us to activate faith and love and hope. And if you do that in your own life and you share that with your children, then we become a beacon of light that shines into the darkness. Paul soothes their fears of the end times by just telling them, you are children of the light, just keep the light shining. Be ready at all times. Paul encourages us to live our lives according to the role model of Jesus Christ. We must combine a lifestyle that sees a short-term attitude with a long-term plan. In other words, live it now because you already know the promise of the future. We are children of God, which means we are children of the light. And in being friends that help friends follow Jesus, it becomes a life of meaning. I found a litany that I want to share with you. It's very brief, but very succinct. We are children of the light. Light illumines our path and shows us the way to go. Light exposes that which has been hidden. Light shines as a beacon to guide us home. Light warns of danger and leads us to safety. Light inspires us to be watchful and to wait. Jesus is the light of the world. When we follow Him, we have the light of life and make the choice not to walk in the darkness. And so I pray you hear from Paul and also from me that you focus your life on quality, not quantity. That you see the issues of our world, of our community, and of our faith family, and you're encouraged by Paul and those around you. You're encouraged then to become outstanding Christian citizens that make a difference and show a better way of living. You may already be doing that, but I'll tell you that when we all do it together, the darkness keeps creeping away. Truth is, if your life encourages and you invite others to follow Christ, we get beyond the worldly. And it quits seeping into who we are, and we become seeping into who the world is. It is the way God chooses for us to live. As friends, helping friends follow Jesus. And all the children say, Amen.